Saudi Arabia spent 8 years and $500 billion building a new city in the desert, a city specifically designed to end the kingdom's dependency on oil. In 2026, oil is still 64% of Saudi Arabia's government revenue, almost the exact same share as the day it started. And this is what went wrong. In 2023, Mohammed bin Salman looked at everyone calling his project impossible and said, "They say it can't be done. They can keep saying that, and we can keep proving them wrong." He was talking about NEOM, a 170-kilometer city in the desert. No cars, no carbon, but robot butlers, flying taxis, 9 million residents by 2045. 2 years later, Saudi Arabia cancelled $6.8 billion worth of contracts in a single month. The construction company building the world's most advanced city has completed 2.4 kilometers of the planned 170. 2.4. And here's the thing. The failure wasn't the execution. It wasn't the corruption. It wasn't even the ambition. It was the math. And the math was always wrong. To understand why, you need to understand what NEOM actually is. In 2017, Mohammed bin Salman had a problem. Saudi Arabia runs on oil, always has, and MBS understood, better than almost anyone, that this was an existential vulnerability. Oil prices collapses, reserves run out, the world moves to clean energy. Saudi Arabia needed a plan B, and NEOM was the plan B. The vision was extraordinary. An economic zone the size of Belgium on Saudi Arabia's northwestern coast, 8 sub-projects in it. The Line, a linear city stretching 170 kilometers from the Red Sea into the desert, home to 9 million people. Trojena, a year-round ski resort built into the mountains, selected to host the 2029 Asian Winter Games. Oxagon, a floating industrial hub designed to become a global logistics center. Shahad, a Red Sea island resort in the marinas, golf course, and luxury hotels. All of it powered entirely by renewable energy, a self-contained civilization built from nothing. The projected cost was $500 billion. That number, by the way, grew fast. By 2025, the internal estimate to complete the original vision was $8.8 trillion. Not billion, trillion. This is more than 25 times Saudi Arabia's entire annual government budget. Here's the consequence of that number. Funding NEOM requires oil money, enormous amounts of it, sustained over decades, which means Saudi Arabia needs oil prices to stay high long enough to build the thing designed to replace oil revenue. And this is where the trap closes. Let's talk through the math, because this is where NEOM was going to fail, not in the desert, but on paper. Saudi Arabia needed to diversify away from oil. Fine, but diversification requires massive capital, and that capital comes from somewhere. In Saudi Arabia, that somewhere is a public investment fund, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, that bankrolls every major project in the kingdom. Here's the problem. The PIF runs on oil revenue, which means to keep NEOM funded over the decades it will take to build, Saudi Arabia needs oil prices to stay high, specifically above $90 a barrel. That's the float the kingdom needs just to balance its national budget. For most of NEOM's construction window, that was sitting between $80 and $70. The machine built to end oil dependency only ran on oil dependency. That is not a strategic problem. That's not a mismanagement problem. That is a structural impossibility. You cannot fund your way out of a dependency using the oil revenue from that same dependency. It is like paying off a gambling debt by gambling. The dependency created the need for NEOM, also made NEOM impossible to finish. But here's the thought-provoking part though. The money problem isn't the worst of it. While the financing was quietly failing, something else was happening on the ground. An internal audit on NEOM, obtained by the Wall Street Journal, found what they described as evidence of deliberate manipulation of finances by certain members of management. Let that settle for a second. This isn't a story about a project that ran over budget because it was too ambitious. There was active manipulation inside the organization running the world's most expensive construction project. The response from NEOM? The written statement says the journal was, quote, incorrectly interpreting the figures. By July 2022, 5 years into the project, only 2 buildings have been constructed across the entire NEOM site. 2 buildings in 5 years on a project the size of Belgium. The line, the flagship, the centerpiece, the one on every magazine cover, had completed 2.8 kilometers of 170. That's 1.5%. Think about what that actually means for a second. A sovereign wealth fund valued at nearly $1 trillion, backed by one of the most powerful governments on earth, with a decade of runaway, and they built 1.5% of their flagship product. Not because they ran out of time, not because of technical failure, because the money was never going to be there, and everyone in the room knew it. And here is where the story gets genuinely strange. The man running NEOM, CEO Nadim Al Nasser, was not someone operating under the illusion of everything was going well. At a company meeting, on the record, he said this: "I drive everyone like slaves. When they drop dead, I celebrate." That's the operating culture of a $500 billion project meant to represent the future of human civilization. Al Nasser stepped down in November of 2024. No urgency in the replacement, no public accountability. By 2025, new contracts have dried up almost entirely. NEOM was not mentioned once in Saudi Arabia's pre-budget statement for 2026. You don't forget to mention a $500 billion project in your budget statement. You leave it out because you don't want to answer the questions about it. If understanding the structural forces behind these failures is what you came for, the math, that was always wrong. The system nobody talks about. This channel is built entirely around that. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Here's the real kicker. NEOM didn't die with an announcement. There was no press conference, no formal cancellation. It died the way all failed megaprojects die, quietly, one contract at a time. March 2026, $6.8 billion in contracts cancelled in a single month. The tunneling contract for the line, gone. The Trojena ski resort, gone. The artificial lakes, the dams, and the bowl structure, cancelled. And then the assets started moving. Oxagon, the industrial zone, transferred to Saudi Aramco, the national oil company. Trojena's mountain terrain, handled by the Ministry of Sports, stripped of its ski resort fantasy, repurposed for the 2034 World Cup infrastructure. Sindala moved to the Red Sea Global, the hospitality company that already manages Saudi Arabia's luxury coastal development. NEOM wasn't dissolved, it was dismembered. Every piece distributed back to the exact entities it was designed to replace. The future got handed back to the past. Here's what this actually means, and I want you to sit with this for a moment. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund wrote down $8 billion across its gigaproject portfolio over 3 years. $8 billion gone, not invested, not returned, written off. And in 2026, oil is still constituting 64% of Saudi Arabia's government revenue, the exact same share as 2025, after 8 years at $500 billion, after a mega project the size of Belgium, after thousands of workers displaced and villages raced to build. Vision 2030 was always supposed to change the numbers. NEOM was the physical proof it was working. The numbers didn't move. Now here's the deeper irony of all. The thing that finally killed NEOM. The regional wars began in early 2026. The oil price volatility, the sovereign funds forced recalibration. That exact scenario was precisely what NEOM was built to protect against. MBS launched Vision 2030 because he understood that a kingdom entirely dependent on a single volatile commodity was permanently vulnerable. NEOM was the escape route. The war made that vulnerability concrete. Goldman Sachs projected Saudi's GDP to contract. The kingdom's foreign reserves came under pressure. Budget committees to the World Expo 2030 and the 2034 World Cup couldn't be deferred. And Saudi Arabia, with no alternative revenue base, had nowhere to turn except the oil. The crisis proved the thesis, and the crisis killed the solution. Here's what this tells us, and it goes far beyond Saudi Arabia. You cannot build a post-commodity economy on a commodity price schedule. The logic is lethal. When prices are high, there is no urgency to diversify. The money is floating. When prices are low, there is no capital to fund the diversification. The window where both the urgency and the capital exist at the same time. That window is almost never open long enough. Nigeria's Eco-Atlantic, Egypt's new administrative capital, every petrostate with a vision documented and a glossy architecture rendered. They all run on the same bed, and the math is the same. Here's what's genuinely true about NEOM, and I want to be fair about it. The ambition was real. The problems it was trying to solve, Saudi Arabia's structural oil dependency, that problem is real. It is not going away, and MBS understood it early and more clearly than almost all his critics. A country sitting on a single volatile commodity needs to build something else. That instinct was correct. The urgency behind NEOM was legitimate. But there is one constraint that instinct cannot overcome. You cannot build a post-oil economy on an oil price schedule. The moment oil dips, the funding stops. The moment oil surges, the urgency disappears. The dependency that created the need for NEOM also made NEOM structurally impossible to finish. NEOM didn't fail because the dream was wrong. It failed because the math was never there. So what do you think? Which part of NEOM had any real chance? The line, Trojena, or Oxagon? Tell me in the comments below. If this is your kind of story, subscribe.